It's not quite as good as Game 7, but I love these two words in sports. It's game week, and it's going to be game day in just a few days in Columbus. Welcome into the Voice of College Football, Buckeyes Live, 281 times with these two. Tony Gerdeman right next to me, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Buckeye Weekly is the podcast, which is more than just once a week. Buckeye Weekly, lock in on that. Steve Hellwagon at 247 Sports. Bucknuts, senior Big Ten writer. Guys, how we doing today?
We're doing great.
Doing well.
Wonderful.
Well, the nation is talking about USC and LSU, Clemson and Georgia, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, and the like. But they are not giving a whole lot of attention to the mighty Zips of Akron.
That's a shame.
It is a shame. It is a shame.
It's understandable. 2-10 the last 2 years, and arguably, one of the worst football programs in America. They don't even seem to have notes on their website. There's no story on the Akron Beacon Journal website about Akron football. I mean, Akron Beacon Journal is now one of those Gannett content churning places where they probably don't even assign somebody. Like if they play a home game, they might send a photographer and one person to cover it like it's a high school game. And there is no local TV station there anymore that generates news or sports coverage. WAKR is now affiliated with the Ion Network. So they're just, churning old bonanzas and stuff like that, I guess. So there is literally nothing left in Akron to cover this team. And the school doesn't put anything on its website about it. The last thing they said was that they were preparing to start preseason camp. They have a guy in social media who comes in and does like a car wash with all the coaches of all the fall sports, like on Monday. And the head coach, Joe Moorhead, spoke for 2.5 minutes, and that constituted his weekly media I guess. And in that, he did announce that Ben Finley would be the starting quarterback for Akron. So, the less we know about Akron, the better. As Ryan Day said, this has nothing to do with our opponent. This is all about us. And, that's kind of how we're approaching it. The University of Akron is getting a robust $1.8 million. And I don't even know if they're going to stay in a hotel or not, if they're just going to treat this like it's Akron St. Vincent St. Mary coming down to play Watterson and just get on the bus at 10 a.m. and come down and change you into your shoulder pads out in the parking lot. And, that'll be how it goes.
Oh, this is a great intro for us.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I was looking, Steve. I was looking to see where is there any Joe Moorhead availability? There's nothing on their website about anything. So, they are certainly understaffed because of lack of funding and all of that. But I'm trying to remember if the word Akron was even used yesterday when we talked with Ryan Day or Jim Knowles and Will Howard, because if it was, it could have been more than once or twice. And it's not about the opponent for Ryan Day this week or the next few weeks. It's about Ohio State. And he honestly said it's about Ohio State pretty much all season long as well, as long as they do what they're supposed to do, play up to their capabilities, and be the hardest playing team in the nation, as he said, then they should be okay.
Steve doesn't realize that he just flashed my youth and childhood right before my eyes. The Akron Beacon Journal. So my mom wouldn't get the paper. She had no use for the paper. So I'd have to wait until the end of the week. I'd go to my grandma's house and she'd save all the sports sections for me. And then when I was 12 years old and I could scrape together enough money, I said, Mom, I'm paying for the paper because I got to get the Akron Beacon Journal so I can look at box scores and memorize them every day and know that there were 37,522 people at the St. Louis Cardinals game last night. I need to know. And as soon as they started to put the parentheses with how many doubles and home runs and triples that the players had, not just that they hit a triple, but it was number 3 on this. Had to look at box scores. So that was number 1. Number 2, when you bring up WAKR, that brings back my 2 internships when I was at Kent State. So Steve, you just laid out my childhood for me right there.
I think Akron, because the Cleveland Plain Dealer is not a Gannett paper, So Akron, I think, does use its entire sports budget on Cavs, Browns, and Guardians. And, there's no reason for them to cover the Zips because, nobody goes and nobody cares. So, it is what it is. And, it again, in 15 or 20 years, will they even play these games? I don't know, because by that point, the playoff will probably be 32 teams, and it won't matter if you play 12 Power 4 opponents or not. As long as you go 7-5, 8-4, you'll probably be in the playoffs. So you won't even need to play these games in the future. So, yeah.
Maybe with that 1.8 million, they can maybe get some game notes next year. We'll see.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Well, Tony, what did Ryan Day, Jim Knowles, and Will Howard talk about?
Well, I think the first thing was he said Taker Shabola is going to be starting at right guard. He's earned that right. He's been consistent throughout preseason practice, but also been consistently available, which has been just as important because of the funky virus that has gone through the offensive line. So he'll get the start. They're going to roll some guys in there. I don't know exactly how quickly that'll be and how they'll do that, but it'll be Taker Shabola at right guard. Sonny Styles will be the starting will linebacker, which is what Day told me last week when I asked him, and he said Sonny was the leader in the clubhouse. But then Jim Knowles said that he considers CJ Hicks a starter as well. He considers him a 1. So they'll work out a way that he said all three of those guys, Cody Simon, Sonny Styles, CJ Hicks, should all get about the same number of snaps. I don't know if I quite believe that because he talks about CJ Hicks a lot, but he never really puts him on the field. So this will obviously be an opponent where he can put him out there and not really be concerned. But, so that was another one. And then Jeremiah Smith, yes, he's going to be a starter, which we kind of knew since, I don't know, March 4th, something, pretty early on in spring ball that he was going to be with the 1. So I think those were the three main jobs that were solidified, announced, and the assumptions were made valid.
Anything stand out to you, Steve, in regards to what was talked about?
Yeah, I think Tony hit the high point. I wrote the Ryan Day comments yesterday, and again, I think some of the most telling comments he had came at the end when Tim May, who's been covering the team forever, asked him about the $20 million price tag. There was a story on ESPN about how they assembled this team. I haven't read it, but I assume they got into detail about, keeping the guys from going pro, paying them money, and then paying Caleb Downs, Will Howard, Seth McLaughlin, and, whoever else to transfer in to Ohio State where, they're all starters. And, Ryan Day said that's all well and good. And this is the new paradigm in college football. It's actually been going on for 2 or 3 years now, but now it's really starting to heat up. I think people are really getting into their comfort zone, buying and selling and horse trading college football players. And so to me, his comment was, that's part of the new climate of college football. But what I like is that these guys understand the mission. They want to be here. They understand what the goals are at Ohio State, and we all have common goals. And to me, that was kind of the message. The upshot of it is, yes, it's the best team that money can buy, but this isn't the New York Yankees where everybody's just chasing a paycheck, and we don't care if we win 100 games or we win 70. It actually does matter to these guys. And several times what was mentioned was the event that occurred on campus earlier in the week. There was a religious event on the Ohio State campus with a number of Ohio State football players front and center at that event, and baptizing people and sharing the word of the Lord and all these other things. Not to go off on too much of a religious tangent, but in his mind, it showed that, again, this team is very close, very spiritual in how they approach their work. And, in his mind, it's all a positive thing, and the positives far outweigh any of the negatives, I guess, is how he looks at it. And we'll we'll see how they feel, after they stumble to a 38-7 win over Akron on Saturday, and everybody, wants the coaches drawn and quartered.
All right. Let's go to our super chats. We so much appreciate your contributions here. We've got Wayne for all the great work you all do. Thank you for that, Wayne. We appreciate you being here. Glad you enjoy it. And then we also have Ryan Dawes. And of course, Ryan, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for that. Did you guys all talk about who will get the first carry at running back?
I'm going to go Travion Henderson just because team captain, 4th year senior, and I think you reward that loyalty to stay with the program. All things being equal, if he's 100% healthy, I think he's the guy. I think Quinshon Judkins will also see quite a bit of work. I think you could pinpoint both of them for 10 to 15 carries, depending on how out of control this game gets. And Coach Day also promised that James Peoples will see some work as well. Whether we will see Sam Williams-Dixon or not remains to be seen. I don't think he's had his black stripe off just yet. And Rashid Cisse, a walk-on from West Muskingum out near Zanesville, is also a possibility, I think, to see some work. And really, other than that, you're pretty much out of running backs with TC Caffey out with an injury. So you don't have a whole inventory of guys to throw in there, but I do believe Henderson will be the first guy out there. That just seems to make sense. But Judkins is also going to play quite a bit, and how I would handle it in the season is split those carries in the first half. And Judkins could very well start some games, be the first guy out there some weeks if Carlos Lachlan feels he's had a great week of practice, or his style of running fits maybe more who they're playing against that week, or the plays that they want to call on offense. They want to throw a swing pass to Quinshon Judkins, who's an outstanding pass catcher out of the backfield. And that's not to say Henderson isn't either. Perhaps you go with Judkins one week as the quote starter. We get wrapped up in who takes the first snap. Let's get to a game later on, Oregon, Penn State, Iowa, Michigan, whatever games they may be, Nebraska, who are taking the important snaps in the fourth quarter. And that's where you're going to find out where the coaches really have their allegiances and who they really trust as the most important players on the team. Could we see some sets where they play together? That's a possibility as well. They didn't really show that at any of the practices that I was at, but I don't discount the possibility that they do that, or even go to a direct snap to one of those running backs as well, with perhaps the other running back, blocking for them, or whatever. I don't know, but they've got a lot of salary cap tied up in those two guys, I would imagine, and they want to get a ton of production out of those two guys.
So, Steve, you're saying that Travion Henderson will not have that ball taken out of the game and put on his mantle as the first carry against Akron?
No, I don't think there's any reason to anoint that, or you want to crown him. But I don't think that we're gonna see a big deal made about that, either with Carlos Lachlan or Quinshon Judkins. Go back to December and January. Quinshon Judkins came to Ohio State knowing that Travion Henderson had not completely closed the door. And certainly Travion Henderson eventually decided to come back to Ohio State knowing that Quinshon Judkins was going to be on the roster. So they knew each other, were on this team when the decisions were made. And again, I bring this up. This is probably the 4th or 5th time I brought it up in spring practice. I think Judkins caught a swing pass and went 80 yards for a touchdown. And in my picture in the background, I've got Henderson with the finger up, celebrating, that his guy was going the distance. So, it's one for all for one, win the national championship, and we all get paid, is kind of how I think they're viewing it.
I wonder if maybe Travion Henderson gets that first carry mark, and then they give him that game ball. Ryan Day signs it. Thanks for helping us get the win over Akron. And then eventually says, I don't even know who Travion Henderson is, kind of like Jim Harbaugh does with Connor Stalions after giving him a game ball. But with the running game, I wouldn't be shocked if Emeka Ibuka is the first guy that carries the ball out of the slot there, just on some of those jet sweep stuffs. But in terms of who will get the first carry at running back, I'm going to go with Steve here and say Travion Henderson. Ryan Day was asked who is starting. Last week we talked to him. He was asked who's starting. He's like, well, that'll be Carlos Loughlin's decision, and they have not gotten there yet. They will talk about it. But as I've said here before, when Travion Henderson is healthy, he starts at Ohio State. He started every game since his third game as a Buckeye, and he's shared the load with Mayan Williams at times. But when he's been healthy, he's been the starter. So I would expect him to start this one. I also wouldn't be shocked if they both start just because it's something you can do. And that way you don't have to answer, well, this guy's the starter. You can just keep pushing it down the road. But neither one of them, like, the starting thing is something that we get hung up on. And this isn't even a question from Ryan about who is starting. It's just, hey, who's going to get the first carry? And I do think it'll be Travion in terms of the running backs.
I think they should run a play out of the pistol, hand it to one of the two, and then run like an option play where they can decide, okay,
it's simple.
Do something like that.
Get everybody involved.
All right. Jim Knowles also hit the podium. Of course, the defense is expected to give up no first downs on Saturday and negative yardage.
Yes.
And, of course, a shutout. That's assumed. Because otherwise it will be a grave disappointment.
Yeah, the defense better outscore Akron. Yes, that is correct. I think one of the best conversations that Knowles had was talking about the recruitment of Caleb Downs the first time and the second time in high school, and then in the transfer portal, because he was asked about his emotions on losing out the first time to Caleb Downs. Like, you got to take your emotions out of it. You got to be very business-like. And they went into the transfer portal portion of it, treating it like a game, basically. Like, you got to be prepared because Caleb Downs, there's nobody else like him. When you present your plan for making him better, for doing this, for the defense, for the scheme, you better be on your P's and Q's. And so then I asked him, so if it's a game, if it was like a game, were you an aggressive play caller that day, or were you bend but don't break? And he's like, it reminded him of when he interviewed for the job at Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy, like, he flew in from Duke, was there for 3 hours. Mike Gundy had like 10 people in a room, and they just, he had his laptop, and they talked for like 3 hours about defense. And he left and got on a plane, never saw campus. And he said it was the same thing with Caleb Downs. Pack up the laptop, head to Georgia, sit down and talk about defense for 3 hours and get back on the plane and hope that you did the job. So, yeah, it was just interesting to see the way he compared that. But everything they talk about with Caleb Downs, like that fits. I think 2 weeks ago he said something to the effect of, he's like the smartest player in the world in terms of what you can ask from him and what he's going to give back to you. So I know they're very, very happy with him right now.
Cheryl's in the chat, and I can guarantee that Cheryl has watched this here at the Voice of College Football longer than anyone watching or in the chat right now. Good to see you, Cheryl. Is this the best defense in the country?
Could be. They were number 2 in scoring last year, number 3 in yards allowed. Only one team really exploited anything against them, and that was the University of Michigan. So, yeah, I think they very well could be. No reason why not. You lose a guy like Eichenberg at linebacker, you need Cody Simon to play as well or better. You need Styles to not have any moments where, I'm making the change from safety to linebacker. You just need him to go make plays at linebacker, like he's been a veteran at that position. So that's two guys I'll be watching, for production. Are you going to be around the football? Are you going to make the smart play? Are you not going to get beaten coverage because you've never seen it before? And Simon's played a lot of football, and he did start half a season before, and, different things. But need the pressure to be good up front. In this game, you want to see him collapse the Akron pocket and make life difficult on the quarterback. They should be able to do that. And in the secondary, you get your hands on a lot of balls. It's time to start intercepting some balls. So I just gave you, 3 or 4 areas that, yes, I believe it could be very well one of the best defenses in college football. Could be they had the lowest points allowed last year, back to like 96, I think, at Ohio State. I want to say last year. So I think that the potential is there to be great again, but there is room for improvement. And of course, particularly when you get into the games against the great offenses like Oregon, potentially Penn State, Michigan, whoever you might play, if you play Oregon again, and then potentially in the playoff, you got to stand up and be accounted for, and you got to sack the quarterback, and you got to create turnovers, and you got to stop the run. I mean, those are the three things: sack the quarterback, create turnovers, and stop the run. Those are the three big things that have to be done. Holding teams to to a small amount of points, that is great, and that helps you win games, certainly. But when the Ohio State offense has an off day, the defense has to be almost letter perfect sometimes, and that remains to be seen. Are they going to step up in that moment? I had somebody in my chat yesterday ask, when Michigan puts a sixth lineman on the field and another lineman in the backfield and goes jumbo and tries to run the football like that, can Ohio State stop the run? I said, I can't answer that because I don't see that in practice, and you wouldn't know that until they line up and do it. And you would think if they see that formation's coming, that they would add, another lineman on defense or whatever they need to do to counter that. But, until you see it, you never know. So again, that's kind of the magic of this 24 season. Everybody's thinking about offensive line and the quarterback. Well, in that signature moment when it has to get a stop, is this defense going to get a stop? And we won't know till we know.
Who are the most indispensable players on this team? Who can't be lost off of this team, either side of the ball, Tony?
Josh Simmons and probably Caleb Downs. Now, if they were to lose Caleb Downs, I assume Lathan Ransom would play free safety, which helps, but then you've got to replace him. So it's a situation there. But if they lose, I think Josh Simmons may be above everybody else, and we may want to start talking about Will Howard in that group as well, the way he has separated himself from Devin Brown. But if they were
Egbuka is a big one because he's your one proven pass catcher. We don't know, again, when we get into talent equated games, we don't know that Tate, Ennis, Smith are going to be, as good as what's, it says on the back of their, of their scouting card, their recruiting card. They don't have a football card yet because they haven't accomplished anything at the college level. But Egbuka, to me, if you lose him, that'd be devastating.
Yeah, and he's a guy that fills a bunch of roles as well. So you wouldn't just be losing a slot receiver; you'd be losing your top backup Z, your top backup X. A punt returner, a guy that can run the ball out of the slot for you. Like there are different things that he can do, and just his leadership. I mean, you saw the struggles when he wasn't there last year. So I think they're better equipped to handle it this year, but that doesn't mean they would still miss a beat. I think pretty emphatically. But I think they like everybody they have. I know they do, but I am interested to see how it looks, and having him out there is going to make everybody better.
This is a 3:30 p.m. CBS game. This is what the Big Ten has thrust on the networks. Did the networks really break this down when they signed with Kevin Warren of what these TV schedules were going to look like? We had Charlotte and Maryland playing an NBC primetime game last year.
Yeah, it's, this is just a week where there's no good matchups, unfortunately, at least that are under Big Ten auspices. They're Penn State's at West Virginia. Fox is getting North Carolina at Minnesota for Thursday night football. So again, I don't know what the selection process was for this week. If this was a week where they had first pick and they took one off the top and said, we're moving it to Thursday night. I don't know if that's what happened, but they took what on paper is probably, the best game in the Big Ten auspices, in the Big Ten home stadiums this weekend and moved it to Thursday night. I don't even know what else there is. I guess, I don't know, what is the NBC game on? Fresno and Michigan, which Fresno is a representative team and Michigan's a team in a bit of transition. So maybe Fresno can get that game into the second half, like 20-10 or something like that, and have a possession to try and get it a little closer before Michigan gives the ball to Donovan Edwards and he tramples them, and that's that. But I don't know. That to me, they're just, this was a week, kind of an anomaly. Even with 18 teams, there just wasn't an inventory. USC's playing a neutral site game with LSU that's under the ESPN auspices with Las Vegas neutral site, promoter, however they contract those games. So that was not on the Big Ten radar. They are getting, CBS is doing UCLA at Hawaii as part of its Mountain West package in prime time. So that'll be interesting. But, I don't know. There'll be better weeks ahead. Let's just say that. But no, they're not recouping their investment. They're $30 million a week. They're not getting their money's worth this week for sure.
But again, it's not about good games. It's about eyeballs. And they're getting Ohio State. So they're not going to be too torn up about that. I mean, this would be in a bad SEC 3:30 window. What would this be like? Arkansas, Texas A&M or something, So
yeah,
it gets to be about
range.
That.
Maybe Notre Dame, Texas A&M. Does that sound right? Is that the 3:30 game on CBI or ABC?
That's the primetime game.
That's the primetime game.
ABC goes Clemson, Georgia at noon, Miami, Florida at 3:30, then Notre Dame, Texas A&M.
That's a pretty good triple header.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How about that Miami, Florida game? The losing coach in that game can pretty much start, turn the sands of the hourglass over, because he ain't going to be long for that job. I bet he doesn't make it to mid-October, the losing coach in that game. So, yeah.
Well, one of them, if they lose, they've got a ACC schedule to lean on that will prop them up the rest of the year, as opposed to the other one that's got a gauntlet.
Yeah. The winner and loser of that game could both be out of work by the end of October. So if everything goes according to Hoyle, Florida, Miami, Florida, and Texas A&M are the three fraudulent programs of the last decade. And, people say, well, why don't you have Texas A&M or Miami ranked up there? Because they never finish up there. That's why I don't rank them up there, because they don't finish up there. So there you go.
The expectations for Miami this year, their playoff expectations. So that tells me they're not going to fold. They're going to totally live up to those expectations, because these are the Miami Hurricanes. This is the U, baby. And they're going to
I've seen Florida State play. I give Florida State a better chance to rebound and win the ACC than I do for Miami to win it. That's how out I am on Miami. They're going to have to fool me a couple times before I believe in Miami, because their culture is total dog shit. I mean, it's just, they have no culture in that program. There's nobody. It's a mercenary program, has been, will be forever. There's no brotherhood there. It's dog shit.
You think I got a clip for the Miami channel now?
Yeah, play it.
Thank you, Steve.
Print every word of that and send it to Coral Gables, because Ohio State ended them on January the 3rd, 2003, and they haven't been meaningful or viable or relevant since that day. So
that is certainly the way it's worked out. And you got two sub 500 coaches going at it in that game. And I have more excuses for Billy Napier than I do Mario Cristobal, again, because he's got to play a legitimate schedule. If you guys have a 3:30 game, when are you guys able to button up all the work, get home, get it all done, and relax and turn on the late night games?
Well, I can tell you, ordinarily I would stay at home until the end of the first quarter of the noon games and then drive in about 12:30, 12:40. But my nephew is playing freshman ball here in Central Ohio, and they play at 9 a.m. So I'm going to go to that, and then I'll probably leave there at about 11 or 11:15 and just head to the stadium. So I'll get set up, and I'll be able to watch like the first half of a game there in the press box or whatever before I start getting into the pregame stuff and going down the field and taking pictures and whatever. After the game, Tony can sometimes be there maybe a little longer than I am doing his podcast, but this is a game against Akron that honestly, when the game ends, people are going to, switch to another game, and they're probably not even going to come on the internet to see what we're talking about because, they watched it. It was a 59-7 bloodletting, and they already know, what happened, and there won't be a huge audience on the internet looking to see what, our analysis of that because they saw it. So I don't know that I'll stay there. I'll probably be somewhere. The Beer Stube is a bar in Columbus, Ohio on North High Street. I've referenced it before. It's going out of business. They are tearing the bar down, and they have 3 games left where you can go. And then they're going to put an apartment building up there in the next couple of years. It's on North High Street around 8th Avenue, 9th Avenue in that block. And I went there when I was in college, 30 some years ago. So my first stop leaving the stadium will be to go in there and have at least one beer, check in on the late games. About halftime of those games are a little later, probably hop in my car and head home. So that'll be when I'm able to catch up on it.
Yeah, it's a long day. Because I do like to get to campus the first game of the year, just get there and be there and check out the Oval and just walk around a little bit and then be in my seat in the press box for the 12 p.m. games because I do want to watch those for as long as I can. But I just plan on being home 7 hours after kickoff. That's about when I get home. Or not 7, yeah, thereabouts. So 7 hours after kickoff. So I'm hoping to get home for like the fourth quarter of the 7:30 games. But also while we're doing our post-game show, we usually have either a TV in the post-game room on so that we can see what's going on, or we'll have our phones, or we're also getting constant updates via the chats about what just happened in this game, what just happened in that game. But yeah, it's a long day. It'll be more than a 12-hour day for me.
Everybody expects. Go ahead, Steve.
You guys stay in the interview room a lot of times after everybody clears out to do your show?
Yeah, that's where we do it. Yep.
Well, that's cool.
Yep.
You got a good spot to do it.
Yep. Yeah, we started doing that a couple years ago. I actually, breaking down the fourth wall, I checked with other people like, hey, do you mind if we do this? In terms of like the dispatch people, like, because some people are still working in there a little bit, but because, I don't like to be talking in places where people are working. It's kind of not a great move, but yeah, so we've been doing that. Yeah, it's rude. So, but it's been working out, and it's a controlled environment. We don't have to go anywhere. We can just do it right there.
Very nice. And we will have post-game here at the Voice of College Football right on the Ohio State channel as the clock goes to double zeros. And they certainly have my approval to jump on halfway through the fourth quarter when it's 59-7, I guess, when the bloodletting is about done. So a lot of attention to and expecting big game performances and big numbers out of the Stars. But Caden Curry, he's a guy that could be in play for a big season.
Yeah, he's going to play a lot. I saw somebody else asking about will Larry Johnson be rotating his defensive line. That's certainly the plan. It's always the plan, but it's not up to Larry Johnson as much as it's up to the twos to be ready for it. And apparently Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson were not ready for it last year, especially in the Notre Dame game when Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau played every single snap. But they can't do that this year. They're certainly not going to do it on Saturday. They're going to be subbing in a bunch of guys, probably all 7 deep at defensive end, I would think, when you consider the top 4. And then Mitchell Melton is certainly going to play. And Joshua Mickens has made some strides, redshirt freshman, and Edric Houston as well. So you'll see probably those 7 out there at defensive end and probably that many at defensive tackle. The real key is going to be how many of those guys are actually playing in against Iowa. How many are playing at Oregon, because it's not going to be 7 at tackle or defensive end. It's going to be 4 or 5 max at defensive end, and probably topping out around 4 at defensive tackle as well.
Jackson is taking a very specific promotional tact here. Tell your friends and family and your frenemies and the cashiers at Publix and Whole Foods about the magic with Mark, Steve, and Tony that they bring every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. 10 Central, if you can't do the math. I was on the phone with someone. I will not name the company. This person was in charge of scheduling. They could not figure out time zones.
Oh,
They could not figure out time zones, did not know what time zone they were in. I had to enlighten them. Well, you're in California, as I understand it, because I've been dealing with this company for about 3 years. Therefore, it is this particular time right now. And they were setting up a meeting. The meeting time that they told me over the phone was different than the email confirmation. So I said, which is it? Is it the email confirmation or what you're telling me over the phone? And they were completely confused about the time zones. And then I said, it doesn't even have anything to do with the time zones. You're giving me 2 different times, even within the time zone. And they got so flustered after an 11-minute wait, they put me on to try to figure out. They said, can you just be available for both times whenever you get the phone call? Okay, just.
We had the same problem. They played that Sugar Bowl against Clemson, and it was on Central Time a few years ago. And the sports information people give us this availability report. And one of the people on our beat confused Eastern and Central Time and put it out an hour ahead of when it was supposed to go out. And that created a major furor with everybody on the beat. Like, I thought it was supposed to go out at blah, because somebody, thought they meant, X Eastern Time when it was X Central Time, or vice versa. I don't want to go to the trouble of figuring it all out, but you get the picture. Somebody thought it was supposed to go out at one time, and it was supposed to go out an hour later. So we've lived it, we've been through it, and we all caught hell for it. So we're like, you're going to screw this up for everybody. We're not going to get this report anymore if you keep doing this. So
what do you think you are, Pete Thamel?
Yeah, exactly. Are you Bruce Feldman? Working for the rights holder and working with Urban Meyer, who heard directly from Ryan Day that the left guard isn't going to play today, and you put it on your pregame show before the availability report's supposed to go out. Yeah. Mark, we've seen it all. We've been screwed over. They tell us you wait till 2 hours before the game to put this out, and we've been screwed over so many times by the national networks on this that, Feldman would tweet it out 15 minutes before, we're supposed to do it, or the Mel would say it directly on the air, an hour before we're supposed to do it. So, and at that point we're like, screw it, all bets off. Here you go. Here's the report, it's happened. Anytime there's been a key injury, we've been scooped on it. So by the national people, there you go.
I got some interesting intel last night about the Connor Stalions situation that will be known when there's a report that's coming out here, I guess, in the next couple of days. It's going to be on somebody's podcast. So
good.
We'll find out about that. But
I haven't watched it. I'm kind of like Ryan Day. My head's just kind of in the sand, and I'm living my life, and I just don't. It's kind of like the whole Showtime thing with the Lakers and Celtics. I lived it. As a Celtics fan, I lived through all that. I every bounce of the ball, I watched it. I don't need to go back over it again. Kind of the same thing here. I just really, I'm in a, as my daughter would say, don't care. So, whatever. The sooner this is over, the better. I'm tired of talking about it.
No, I did watch it because my podcast co-host asked me to watch it so that we could talk about it. And of course, he did not watch it. But I was the one that was forced to watch it. And
you got tasked.
Yeah, and there's a reason I've been calling it the Connor Stalions Netflix comedy special because there are some good laughs in there. And as I tweeted about it, I think yesterday or the day before, or yesterday, that the documentary ends towards the ending. Connor Stalions is lying about not remembering if he was at the Central Michigan game. He just says, I can't recall, which is a lie. And so that's towards the end of the thing. That should actually be towards the start of the documentary so that that everything else that comes after this is clouded in doubt because he's knowingly lying to people in this situation when he's asking about this stuff. So what else is the truth? What else is a lie? You can't believe necessarily anything that he says because he's willing to lie to the documentary people. And also then they show a clip of him saying, I don't recall being I don't recall being at the Central Michigan game or whatever, to the NCAA people. So this is what you're dealing with. This is the subject of the documentary that you're dealing with. So I think that being towards the end, at the same time that they're trying to put out a narrative that Ohio State hacked into a Connor Stalions thing and that this is all Ohio State's fault as part of the documentary is also irresponsible.
So a guy who attends his team's football games because he's on staff and has been for these 3 or 4 years and doesn't generally, I would think, go to Thursday and Friday games because how often does that occur in which he would be able to get to those games? Doesn't recall that he went to a game a year ago.
Yeah, well, and it would be less than a year ago, and then the notion that Ohio State was aware of what Connor Stalions was doing, but Michigan wasn't, like that doesn't fit. And in terms of Justin Courtney, Tony, have you ever lied in your life? Of course, but we're talking about this subject. So if you're lying about this subject, what else is a lie about this subject? What is actually the truth? And there's one point where his Connor Stalions' dad says like 90% of what's been reported is false. It's like, well, what's the 10% that's true? And is that the good part, the bad part? And yeah, sure. I bought tickets for people and sometimes they would send me video, but it's like, I didn't need it. Come on. What are we doing here?
Yeah. The whole part about friends would send him the video, but he didn't need it because he had already memorized the signals. How would he possibly have memorized the signals without attending a game in person or having somebody send him the videotape? Because the signals are not available in the all 22 video. They're not available on the television video. So I guess I'm confused how he had already memorized the signals. He doesn't fill in the blank of how he already knew them. Well, how does he know him on the first play of the game of a brand new opponent? How does he know him on the first play of the game?
Well, he does talk about the underground tape trading that goes on with the sign stealers at multiple programs. So I think there's some of that there that he can rely on. But as I've said, I think on the Buckeye Weekly podcast, we're supposed to believe that he's getting all of this through TV copy, maybe some all 22, and then anything in person that he's doing in memorizing, even though he can memorize all of these different signals, but he can't remember if he was at Central Michigan 10 months ago. But like, you're splicing all of this together. And I compared it to like in Jurassic Park, when they're trying to put the dinosaur DNA together, they had to use frog DNA to bring it all together. Like maybe there's just a lot of frog DNA in some of those signals, but it turns out he's gotten most of them correct because he says in the video, in the documentary, it's himself that, I wasn't wrong often. So, and this is something we did a live show before Ryan Day yesterday talking about this. And I truly believe every program could use somebody as dedicated and maniacal as Connor Stalions in their program. He would be a benefit to every single head coach out there. But if you have somebody like him, you know exactly what he's capable of. And so if you don't rein him in, if you just let him do what you know he's going to do, that's on you as well. So you better have him well disciplined, because if you don't, you're encouraging it. And let's not forget, 3 years ago, Jim Harbaugh said, we're going to beat Ohio State or die trying. This any means necessary is the message there. And if somebody like Connor Stalions hears that, he's going to go forward with it. And if you don't think you have any responsibility in what happens after that, you're wrong as the head coach, and the NCAA will tell you that you're wrong.
I love the irony that this post-game game ball coronation was after they just shut down the worst offense in the country. So was there any context given to or any audio of that game ball?
Yeah. Connor said Jim Harbaugh gave him that for the Iowa game, and then also, don't get a big head, something to that nature. So like, you really helped us now, like Han Solo told Luke Skywalker, don't get cocky, kid. And clearly,
Stay
one
behind the
documentary
curtain.
later, yeah, stay humble. And
Well, what's crazy? I put this on Twitter. I said they were victims of their own success, and they were so brazen about how they did it. And I still remember I'm in South Bend watching, I think, the Michigan Rutgers game that day, and Greg Schiano is all indignant at halftime on national television. He goes, "Something's going on here. Something is not right," and really didn't press him on it. But come to find out, he was one of the first ones beating the drum about this, that they've got our signals somehow before the game started. And you just sit there and you're just kind of dumbfounded about how this thing just mushroomed out of control on them. And they were just, they would have been ahead had they, when they got a lead that was comfortable enough, to tell the guys on the field, "Oh yeah, it's a run and it's a deep pass or something," and give up a late deep pass or something, just to throw everybody off the scent a little bit or something, because they were too good at it. I mean, they were just too good at it. And, I still can't get over everybody, Sharon Moore, the defensive coordinator, the offensive coordinator, Jim Harbaugh, all want to plead ignorance when there are films directly with him in their ear telling them what's coming and then them making the call, many times. How these guys have been coaching football for 20, 30 years. Nobody has ever been clairvoyant to tell them what's coming at any point in their career prior to this. And this guy suddenly has an 80 to 90% hit rate, and you're winning all these games that you couldn't win previously, 49-26 previously, 48-3 with him. And you're kind of like, no one ever stopped to think, how's he getting this information? Where's it coming from? How do you know that? Where did you find that out from? It's like, the guy suddenly, Ray Babbitt, they're standing on the sideline, idiot savant from Rain Man. And, it's Charlie Babbitt, it's like, what, they're aces. There's lots and lots of them, it's like run plays. Yeah. There's lots and lots of them. I don't get it.
Still waiting for the final conclusion to that one. It should be.
Stay tuned for the thrilling conclusion on the next edition.
But it's like Game of Thrones. You got to wait 3 years for it.
Yeah. Let's go already. You got to have the balls to make the calls. I had a guy in left field one time in my slow pitch softball league who was mad at the umpire, and he goes, "You got to have the balls to make the calls. We're looking for the NCAA to have some balls here, because this is as if he's driving down I-70 at 105 miles per hour. They've got the gun, 105 miles per hour. Pull him over. Here's your ticket." And it's prima facie law, is what I was told by a state trooper one time. You're dead to rights. There's nothing. The court's going to back up whatever I tell you, and that's that. So take the ticket and go on with life.
But it just depends on how that judge feels nowadays, because 10, 15 years ago, every game that the NCAA knows that Connor Stalions bought a ticket for and planned to scout, every opponent, that game would be vacated.
Should
in terms of back then, it would have been undoubtedly vacated, everything in postseason ban. I just don't know that the NCAA
has the stomach to do that.
Right. And we've seen bowl bans and postseason bans just recently. So like, these are things that the NCAA will still do. Generally, they're more self-imposed because a school knows it, probably feels like the NCAA is going to do it anyway. I don't know that Michigan at no point have they felt to the point where, like, what, things are going bad, we might want to self-impose. But I have said, if they go 2-2, don't be surprised if they start talking about some self-imposing a bowl ban this year if they start out 2-2. But I just don't know that the NCAA is interested in handing stuff out like that anymore. I don't know that they're not, but I do know in the past, for every game that you tried to gain an advantage on, that would be vacated. And that would include a 2023 opponent in Ohio State that you improperly scouted in advance. Even though Connor Stalions was not on the sideline for that, that was a game that you sought to have an advantage in. So that would be among the list as well a decade ago. I don't know if it will be anymore.
Is Toledo on one of their future schedules? I'm looking forward to that. So getting back, 4-8, losing to Toledo. That's hanging's too good for them. So.
And that Toledo game, and I keep I'll remind people that win for Toledo over Michigan wasn't even enough to keep Tom Amstutz from being fired after that season. Toledo gets a win over Michigan, and he still gets fired that year.
Larry Lage, the AP writer, his lead, the legendary AP writer from Detroit, who's Michigan as Michigan can possibly be, said the lead was Ann Arbor, Michigan - Holy Toledo ! So there you go.
Great stuff out of these two. As always, Tony Gerdeman, BuckeyeHuddle.com. What's going on this week with you?
Well, yeah, we are now to essentially the daily episode edition of the Buckeye Weekly podcast, and we dropped one yesterday about the Connor Stalions thing. We'll have something eventually later tonight into tomorrow about whoever we're talking to today, because I don't think we've even been told what players we'll be talking to today. And
probably
so
the three other captains is my guess.
Yeah, and so we'll have something from there, and then bold predictions on Thursday or so for the Akron game, and then of course you can find all kinds of writing at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Just posted a story today about Will Howard and needing to be the best decision maker in the country, but only needs to make the routine plays routinely, according to Ryan Day.
Steve, what's on
I'm
tap?
just slogging through my game data page that I always do, previewing the game. It's kind of hard to do when there's very little information about the opponent, but we will slog through it the best we can. Do picks for the weekend on Thursday. I'm going to probably write a column with my prediction for the season on Friday. That's kind of an annual tradition. There's also a statue dedication for Archie Griffin this weekend outside Ohio Stadium. They're not releasing a lot of details on that right now, but that is going to happen at some point. And he is also, of course, dotting the I at halftime in Script, Ohio. So that'll be – I hope CBS shows that live. That would be kind of cool if they're – I presume they will, since this game is such a dud. That's the one redeeming social value of this game, is to celebrate Archie Griffin, 50th anniversary of his first Heisman Trophy win in 1974. And I got some other odds and ends I want to do. I wrote a story yesterday about the 14 previous times Ohio State's been number 1 or number 2 in the preseason AP poll since 1950 was the first time that they did a preseason poll. The poll goes back to 1936, but they didn't start it until early October in the first, decade and a half of it. 14 times. They've really haven't accomplished much in any of those 14 previous seasons. One of those was 1998, obviously, when they were number 1 to start the year, and it didn't pan out. 1970 was one of them with Rex Kernan, those guys. They did go 9-0. They were given the National Football Foundation National Championship at the end of the regular season, ... and then lost in the Rose Bowl to Jim Plunkett. So you can't even really count that as, they didn't win the AP poll or the coaches poll that year, obviously. So, it has not been a good omen. Let's just say that. To open the season 1 or 2, they haven't finished usually anywhere near 1 or 2. So not a good omen.
Another recognition for a Buckeye great is you can add to the list of Pro Football Hall of Famers from Ohio State with Randy Gradishar here in the last couple of weeks as well. All right, everyone, enjoy the game. Tony, always appreciated. Steve, you as well. We will be back here sometime next week, probably Wednesday, but that's why you subscribe here at the Voice of College Football, and we'll catch everybody next week. Enjoy week 1.